Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the ALD vlogs, and today I'm going to talk about my programming setup for Live Art, which is an event I did with Spark, or School of the Performing Arts in the Richmond community. Live Art is an event that brings together students of all ages, all types, abilities, disabilities, and pairs them with a bunch of celebrities who volunteer their time to come and help give these students a chance to shine on stage and have a special moment and be with their peers and be among people who will love and support them as they, explore themselves as individuals. Sort of our sub theme was love. So we had a lot of songs or moments about human compassion, um, and being nice to each other as human beings. So this is my snapshot right here, and I'm going to sort of show you around and show you how I navigated live art. You can see I have my color palettes up here. We have wheel colors and mixed colors because we have some units that have color flags in them. So we have options to mix them with flags or mix them CMY with actual mixing. Down here we've got effects. This is another direct select pattern that's in Flexi, so I can see all of the ones I made. We pretty much used the stock effects, and then I also made some special effects of my own. These zoom effects right here, 5, 10, 15, 20, are basically the same linear effect with the size or the scale at either 5, 10, 15, 20, etc., etc. And then same with pulse. That's just an intensity with different scales. Over here we have all of my macros. I made a bunch of macros for the show. First we've got auto mark disable, because we had auto marking on for this. But I also have options to manually mark and unmark different things. Non-intensity parameters at enter, so you don't see mover trash going out of something. You just say select the channel, non-intensity parameters at enter, or basically recall from the last cue. Select active, because I programmed this on an ion, and select active is way too many buttons on the ion. Star Drop Twinkle activates all of the Star Drop Twinkle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in sequence. So I made a linear effect for each intensity 1, intensity 2, intensity 3, and staggered them at different rates, so it sort of had this twinkle vibe thing. And then, of course, stop effects, because that's extremely useful. Undo update track, because sometimes I did this show in queue only, but then sometimes the designer will want to change, and you update it, and then it's like, oh wait, I wanted to track that, so I have that. Block and label is great for transitions. Auto block clean, unblock, and then intensity block, which is extremely helpful because just the intensity won't go through. Any moving light parameters will still go through. Offset, random, even, odd, they're great, especially for effects if you don't want, them to all do the figure 8 or the can-can in a line going down the pipe. And then same with odd and even. It'll take every odd fixture or every even fixture and do whatever you specify. And that works for not just effects, but color palettes. If you want every other thing to be pink and every other to be blue, you can use offset, odd, and even as well. Pan fan center and tilt fan center, as I found out, these are really good for if you have multiple units hung one way and you want them to pan in the same direction or tilt in the same direction, and they don't because that's how they currently are configured to get to that original position. Pan fan center and tilt fan center will really help because it'll take basically the absolute value and move them in opposite directions. And flip horizontal, flip vertical are good for you're going from a cross light to a fly out, and it just does this weird spinny thing and then flies out. You can flip it and it'll take the coordinates and mathematically work out what would put me in the same position but with different pan and tilt hard value numbers. And then, of course, it'll always take the path of least travel to get from one position to the next, so flip can really help. Update by type. This is for palettes. So if you have a color palette and say you want all of your 3000s to be the same red, you can make one of them red and make the palette what's called a by type palette, or everything that's also this profile, also this fixture, reference what's in this palette. So if you have the first 3000 as red, any other 3000 when you click on that palette will be that same as the first 3000. Update discrete is if you have, say, you have a bunch of 3000s, except this one guy doesn't like to mix like everything else, then you can mix the one guy differently and update him what's called discrete, or do not obey the master by type channel. Whenever you put in that palette, it won't reference the one guy who's saying, everyone, this is red for my profile, it'll take its own value that you've recorded. Highlight, super helpful for when you're trying to get all the moving lights to a certain spot. And if you don't want to have to see through all the other stuff that's on, you can highlight and it'll just put whatever you specify at the high level preset and everything else at the low level preset. Flash on and flash off. Really helpful. If a unit's on and you're like, wait, what is that guy? Then you can say flash on or flash off and it'll blink accordingly. And then I have macros for my snapshot as the programmer, and then Joe's snapshot as the designer, Joe Doran. And then, of course, I have macros for lamping on and lamping off, and global reset. At the bottom here, I've got my snapshot direct select, and this is really handy, especially on a touch screen, as I found out, because I have multiple snapshots set up because I have multiple parts of the console that I want to be able to access really quickly. And so instead of typing in snapshot 1, snapshot 2, etc., I can just come down to the bottom here and then click whichever configuration I want, and I will get there immediately. So right now we're in the color effects and macro snapshot, and we're going to go to the patterns. And this is part of the global magic sheet that we have for the show. As you can see, Live Art is a show they do every year, so this magic sheet has sort of been built on and changed from year to year. So I can't take credit for any of this magic sheet. Actually, the associate Betsy and the assistant Robbie primarily spearheaded the creation of this in years past, and of course editing this year. This is quickly getting to the pattern. So the designer says, hey, I want that pebble gobo. So you just click here, you find whatever unit you're looking for, whether it's a 2500, a 3000, or a Mythos, and you say, okay, pebbles, dust, etc. And it's got all the different options for all the different wheels. Jumping over here, we have beams. So beam soft and beam sharp for wheel 1, 2, and 3 at spot 30%, 50%, 70%, and flood. Spot options all the way to flood, different options for all the wheels, and then sharp versus soft. Going over to focus, this is sort of a really rough layout of the stage. We've got all the different positions here in the triangle of sort of geographically where they are on the stage. We had lots of it's a giant moving light rig. I don't have a magic sheet that I can show you. And so we've got individual focus points. And then also over here we've sort of got general washes, like perfect downs. So everything's lined cross light, which is a very cool look for haze. And then X light, which is different than cross light, because cross light, each side of the stage is shooting to the other side of the stage, versus X light, the two units that are next to each other are each making an X instead of it's sort of like V's versus X's, in a sense, as well. We also have downstage wash for all of our front of house movers, and riser cross, riser front for the risers that were back here as well. And then orchestra was back here, and that would hit them as well. For presets, the crosslight and X-light also has presets, because before that was focus palettes. Now this includes zoom as well. The zoom effect, I forget exactly what we used that for, but it was something we used more than once, so we put it in a preset to reference later. House wash, we had several cues where the lights would go out into the house, and that's what the house wash was for. Same with the audience stars with template, and FOH VL 2500 with house. Upstage blue works because sometimes we had the mid-stage, mid-stage scrim in, and they needed to see back there, so we had the upstage groups of Mac Auras in perfect downs at blue, and that was upstage blue works as well. Low light and highlight, because you need that for highlighting. Clown puke, that's where all the lights sort of come out into the audience in rainbow colors, and it's an interesting look, but it's not something you want to go with all the time, and that's kind of why we call it clown puke, because it's literally all the different colors are coming out into the audience. It's sort of like throwing up, but not really. And then stars in the audience was another one. And this was at the Altria Theater, and there's this great big dome in the ceiling that reflects really well. So we put some units, focus them up into the into the dome, and that's the dome preset. The Beautiful Child canvas is there were like 4 canvas easels things on stage, and each one got a light on it, and that recorded the focus, the zoom, and the edge. And the reason we have that as a preset is because we didn't want to update the cue because they moved it on us right before we opened for the show. So we were like, we don't know if they're gonna go with this new blocking, so we recorded it as a preset so we could just reference it all later and update the cue a lot quicker. And then going over here, table patched. I've got, my classic table, like so. PSD is all the cues. Our associate Betsy did a wonderful job labeling everything and blocking it as well, so that came in really handy when we would, after we cued the whole show in tech, when we started running it, then tracking became really useful because blocking saved our lives more than once. Also, not blocking screwed us over more than once. And there you have it. That is my snapshot for live art.